Hello and welcome to the Global Workplace Wellness Summit. This is Joyce Edison, Interpersonal Wellness Services Inc., interpersonalwellness.com, and founder of the Global Workplace Wellness Summit. Today I am hosting and have the wonderful pleasure of introducing Luke McEldowney, a wellness consultant and elite performance coach. Luke is going to share with us how we can use the athlete mentality to boost performance at work. Luke himself is a coach and he's working to do more work with organizations in boosting performance at work and improving wellness for employees and their teams. Luke, welcome here.
Thank you, Joyce. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So what are you going to share with us today?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about the athlete mindset, like you said. So, just to start out, we can talk about what is the athlete mentality. And what I'm preaching is that we should all treat ourselves like an athlete. Because you see, athletes, they depend on their ability to perform every day, all the time. And really, we're all out there performing too. So there's something that we can really piece together, and then that can help us boost our performance. So, to start out, athletes have really clear priorities. They know what their mission is. They are clear with their values. And that's something that can really help people boost their performance. Because if you know what you stand for, you can use that as your guide. It can help you make all your decisions, be sort of like a moral compass, right? So then you're going to be a lot more intentional with how you're spending your time. So once you figure that out, once you get those priorities really straight, whatever that is, then you're going to be able to build your life around that. So you don't really need to strive for work-life balance, because that's this thing that people always talk about, but it's really hard to achieve. Instead, I think that you just need to have those clear priorities. So then when you're thinking you don't have enough time, really you should just be looking back at what your priorities are, and then that's how you can figure out what's the most important thing to be doing at any given time. So then you are able to create a lifestyle that you're really passionate about, because you're focused on those priorities that are driving you towards your mission, that are based in your values. And when you're passionate about your lifestyle, you're going to want to do it every day.
So what I hear you say, Luke, is we shouldn't strive for work-life balance, and having those priorities are going to be what keeps us motivated. So what else sets an athlete apart and makes them so successful, and how can we as individuals apply that in our lives?
Right. Yeah. So another really important aspect of the athlete mentality is goal setting. So when you set really clear goals, especially big goals, it's important to really strive for those great things that maybe you think that you shouldn't be going after, but you need to set big goals that maybe scare you a little bit. That's how you know that you're probably on the right track. So when you set those really clear goals, you're able to break things down a whole lot further. And I'll talk a little bit more about that once I explain the goal setting process too. So a lot of people have probably heard about SMART goals, and that's a really great place to start. And I've sort of adapted my own model, and where I want people to be setting goals that are SMART AF. So, of course, we know goals need to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So with the specific part of the goal and the measurable part, they kind of work together. You want to actually know what you're going for. You don't want to just say, oh, I want to get in better shape. People say that all the time on their New Year's resolutions, and then it just kind of falls apart because you don't have something specific that you're striving for, and it's not measurable. So you have to actually be able to quantify what you're doing and what you're going for so that you can see that progress, you can track it, and then you'll be able to make a plan that will help you get there. Same thing with being attainable, you know, and realistic, sorry, they kind of work together, where you have to really have good self-awareness. So being attainable, you want to be able to hit that goal and maybe even exceed it, but then it really has to be realistic. So you have to know yourself and say, okay, is this something that really makes sense for me, or should I start a little bit smaller? And then with Timely, you just have to set some sort of parameters so that you have an actual date in mind. So then with the AF part, we want it to be a little bit adjustable and flexible. And those sound really similar, but I think they're different because you can adjust your goal a little bit once you're in the process. You know, you might find that you're needing to change things up a little bit, and that's okay. So you want to be striving for, you know, something way up here, but if you fall a little bit short, that's fine. And the flexibility part is, you know, if you're somebody that's got, you know, a fitness goal, of course this can be related to work too, but if you want to achieve, you know, a certain number of days per week or something like that, you might not get it all the time, and that's not a reason for you to just throw in the towel. See, there are several different kinds of goals that you can set that really help you be successful in that process. So you have your outcome goals, and those are, you know, sort of the big picture thing. Like, what is my ultimate goal? And that's great. But you want to break it down and then use process goals that lead up to the outcome goal. So your process goals are going to be, how am I going to get that outcome goal? You're setting these goals that are going to be maybe weekly or monthly things that are building up to that bigger goal, so that you actually have a plan to get to that goal. You know, so then if you need to be adjustable or flexible with that outcome goal, it's not that big of a deal because you've been so successful with your process goals all along the way. Even if you fall a little bit short, then you still feel like you've done well. So then the final goal that you can use as well is a performance goal. And that is something, you know, for athletes, that's a specific measure like shooting percentage or, you know, your batting average, something like that. And if there are things that apply to your work, fitness, nutrition, or whatever, you know, then that can be something that you use as well.
Great. Wow. So what I'm hearing you saying is we need to be clearer on the goals we set for ourselves and why we have those goals in order for us to stay clear and stay focused and move forward. So are there other strategies that can help people stick with their goals so they can perform at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that is really important for athletes is having good routines. You know, as you can see from the quote right there, first we make our habits, then our habits make us. It sort of gets, I mean, of course, the word routine, it becomes a routine. You build these habits by doing things the right way. You know, we have to be better at focusing on, you know, getting good sleep, moving our bodies the way that we know we should, feeding our bodies. Athletes know if you give your body the fuel that it needs, you're going to be able to perform. Well, if we are treating ourselves like athletes, then we know that the food that we're eating should fuel our performance, right? These all tie in to these routines that are sort of fundamental. Then, of course, with the meditation, you have to train your mind as well. So that's something, you know, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. If you've never done anything like meditation, you can start with something really small. You can just add that to your routine in a really simple way, like taking small breaks. You should probably be taking little breaks when you're working anyway, so you're not burning yourself out. And you can take those little mindful moments and just kind of focus on your breath, calm yourself down, and refresh. Those are great ways to start practicing meditation without having the stress of, oh, I have to sit here on this pillow cross-legged and that's really uncomfortable for 20 minutes. You know, that most people aren't going to do that. But if you are able to build it into your routine in really simple ways, then maybe you can build up to something sort of like that. Another way to use routines, just like athletes, is before you do something that you do all the time. You know, we all send lots of emails, we make sales calls, we have meetings, interviews, things like that. And there are routines that you can set up. It should be meaningful to you that help you be successful before you do each of those things. It can be something really simple, but when you, like I said, build those habits, it sort of triggers an automaticity when you're doing these same behaviors over and over. So then your body figures out how to get ready and do it really well so that you can optimize your performance when you're doing whatever it is, you know, even if it's just sending an email. So one way to think about setting up a routine like that is to look back at the past successes that you've had. You know, when do you do your best work, and what kind of environment are you in? Are you listening to music? Are you definitely not listening to music? You know, those are things that you can set up. You can put these structures in place so that you're able to be really successful with your time.
Wow. I like the structure you're putting in, and as coaches, we talk about the value of structures for clients. So that was very well put together. So tell me a little bit about what would you suggest for people who have a hard time sticking with their routines? What are some strategies you think they should be using?
Yeah, so definitely when you're struggling with getting something like that set up, or if you feel like you're sort of falling off the bandwagon, if you have those really clear priorities, mission, the values, whatever it is for you, you know, then you can sort of come back to that and use that to really push yourself forward and get back on track. You know, if you ask yourself when you're doing something, how does this serve my vision? You know, hopefully that would be really helpful. Like I said before, as sort of a moral compass, it's going to guide you so that you know, should I really be doing this? You know, does this actually serve my vision? You know, I think that a really good benchmark that works in a lot of different ways is this going to change my day? You know, probably for the better, hopefully, is what you're using that as. So, you know, if it's something food related, at work, you know, you thinking about having a snack in the afternoon and somebody brought cake or somebody brought donuts in the morning, you know, you don't need to eat those sweets just because they're there or just to satisfy your sweet tooth. Is this actually going to change my day? And does this align with the values that I have, whether that's, you know, being healthy, setting a good example for, you know, your kids or other people? And you have to set those high standards for yourself. Same with when you're working. If you're just sort of surfing the internet and you feel yourself getting caught in that loop, because it happens. You know, the internet is basically designed most of the time to get you caught in that loop and suck so much of your time. But if you're paying attention and trying to figure out, okay, does this actually serve my vision? You know, is this one of my values to be distracted, or am I somebody that stays on task and gets things done? So, you know, that's a great place to start. And then two, like I said before, the mental training part, you know, forget about the stigma that's meditation is just for hippies. It's being proved by science, you know, so this is a real thing that can make a difference for you. And the way I like to think about it is really it's training, it's education. We all know that education is really important. It's something that we are kind of forced to do for the beginning of our lives, and that I imagine that everybody here knows that it's really important. So we really should be starting with something small and simple, because then we're able to build up these skills. It's all about the incremental improvement. For athletes, you're not just going to throw a ton more weight on the bar, every time and be successful. You have to just build it up slowly and recover. You can do that with work, so you can avoid distractions. You can set those structures in place like we talked about earlier, so you can even just cut off the internet. If you don't need it, turn it off and stay focused on what you're doing, but set a timer, so that way you have this goal. Okay, I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna work for 20 minutes or whatever it is, and then I'll take a little break. Maybe that's 5 minutes to surf the internet and watch a video on YouTube or whatever. But that's a great way to sort of reward yourself and give yourself a little break. And so that's a really great way to start incorporating that mental training, because you're really training your focus. You're helping yourself learn how to concentrate better by sort of grooving those good patterns. You're building habits, and every time that you get distracted and stay off task, that's building a negative habit, which we obviously want to avoid.
So I like that you are sharing how we can keep ourselves motivated, and the part about rewarding ourselves, because so often we don't, and using that example about the internet and surfing and how that is a great analogy. So what are some other strategies that athletes use to optimize their performance that we can take into our daily work on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so people have probably heard about visualization or imagery. I imagine that as kids, our coaches, if we played sports, have talked about visualizing yourself being successful. You can see yourself, whether it's shooting a basketball or whatever. This is something that we've probably heard but haven't really thought about all that much. And in reality, this is something that people use, high-level athletes are using all the time. You're able to practice different scenarios before you are in that scenario, right? So you're able to see yourself being successful, and then you go and do it, and it works. It turns out the way typically you see it going. A great example is Michael Phelps. He uses imagery all the time, and once at the Olympics, his goggles weren't sealed, and they started filling up with water. But this was something that he had gone over in his head, because you're able to sort of navigate some of the potential obstacles you might struggle with in any given situation. And then once you see yourself being successful anyway, then when it does come up, you're able to handle it much better. For him, he ended up swimming a personal best and winning the race. And that's not something that very many people would be able to do when they can't see at all. Another Olympian, Michaela Schifrin, when she made her first appearance in the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, she was asked how she was able to be so successful, because she was really young when she won quite a few gold medals. And her explanation was that she'd been there before. She had worked really hard to use all of her senses and figure out what it would be like to be in that environment. The Olympics are crazy. It's really something that can break down an athlete if they're not prepared for it. But if you use imagery and figure out how to be successful in that environment, and you see yourself doing it, then you're gonna experience that success, and it's just gonna come to fruition when you actually get the opportunity. This is something that you can practice a lot, because you really have a lot of different things that you're doing all the time, and whatever it is, there's going to be a lot of obstacles that could come up. So you're able to work through them all doing something like imagery. Another thing that is really important is the self-talk. So when people get stuck, they're feeling really negative, then that can be something that makes a really big difference for them too. So when you're able to consciously choose happiness and positivity, you're really setting yourself up for success. So you're kind of taking ownership and setting your intention for the day. There's actually several different types of self-talk that you can use to sort of get your mind on your team. Your mind is always working, and you want it to be working for you, not against you. So positive and motivational self-talk is more general. That's, let's go, or you can do this, something like that. It's pretty simple, and those are things that you can use when you feel that it's appropriate. But just like setting up those routines and getting that practice, you should try to figure out what would be appropriate in those different situations. So maybe positive and motivational self-talk would be great for you, or maybe you need something that's a little bit more instructional. Like for an athlete, I'll use the basketball analogy again. Oftentimes we're told to put your hand in the cookie jar. So when you're extending on your shot and you want a good follow through, you put your hand in the cookie jar, and that's the self-talk that you're using to remind yourself how to use the correct form. So that's another, that's a different type of self-talk, I should say. But really what it comes down to is, how do you want or need to feel in any given situation? What are the thoughts that would help you feel that way? If you think about what happens when you get negative or whatever it is, and then really focus on, okay, what would I need to feel right now in this moment to be successful, whether it's a big meeting or an interview. And then once you sort of establish what thoughts would help you be really successful, then those are the things that you can start saying to yourself. Because you don't need somebody else to tell you the things that you need to hear. You can be in control. You can take ownership of your life, really, and tell yourself all of the things that you need to hear to be successful. Sometimes too, we do get caught in that habit of negativity, but you can take those things that you hear yourself saying a lot and reframe them, because it's these simple little tweaks that we can make that really make a big difference for us. Once you start going down this really negative path, it can seriously affect your performance. But if you take those things that are already grooved habits and adjust them a little bit so that they become positive, then that's going to make a huge difference for your mindset.
That's really good. Thanks for sharing that. So what are some practical applications that people can start? What have you seen with clients, or in your experience? Can you personalize a little bit more that we can start using right away?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you go back to thinking about your priorities and your missions and your values, your mission and your values, that's something that you can incorporate into something like a morning routine. It's really standard to, like I said, when you're setting your intention at the beginning of every day, that can be somewhere that you kind of have your values be really visible, or you know what your priorities are, and so you figure out what you really want to focus on. What are the most important things that you want to do every day? You figure that out right away in the morning, and then it sort of helps you. It helps you sort of have that checklist in your head, or you could even write it down, and then you know exactly what you're going to be focusing on. Another thing too, with the self-talk, if you use a journal, that's a great way to sort of get it all out. Sometimes when we have that negativity and we get stuck in those habits, writing it down can make it kind of look silly. And there are all these things that we say to ourselves that we would never say to, you know, our best friend or a loved one. And if we put it down on paper and look at it, it's something where we can say, wow, no one should ever hear that. So I need to start changing the way that I talk to myself. So I think that using that journal is a really great way that you could go about that. And then with the self-talk too, you can think about some of the common mistakes that you make. And if you establish self-talk routines around that, then you can really help yourself move forward a lot more quickly. You can build that resilience. So when you are struggling, then you know exactly what you need to do, the things that you need to say to yourself, and how you're going to focus on moving forward. Like, what's the most important thing right now? It's not that mistake that I just made. If you're giving a big presentation and you forgot to say something, and then you focus on that thing that you forgot to say the whole rest of the time, then you're not giving the best presentation that you possibly can. You know, when you're stuck in those difficult moments, you have to be able to bounce back quickly. So you really have to focus on what's important now and move on. So you can use, like I said, you can use self-talk, but you could also even use imagery, like we said with the Michael Phelps example, excuse me. You can go through those experiences when you maybe slip up a little bit, and then when it does happen, you're going to be a lot more successful. So, you know, you're experiencing that stress of, you know, things that are going wrong, but if you avoid focusing on the temporary discomfort of what you're feeling and think about, okay, how much better could I get right now in this moment? I'm struggling, but what can I get out of it? Then what could I learn? Then you're able to move forward, and I think people would find that that's going to help them be really successful, because in reality, failure is only feedback. So if you use that feedback and sort of embrace where you are and then move forward, you can also realize that the pressure that you're feeling is a privilege. You can use that as something that you reframe and think, okay, how lucky am I to feel this pressure that I'm feeling right now, right? So it's amazing to be in that situation where you're able to see what you're really made of, like just figure out, okay, do I really stack up? And, you know, if not, then how can I learn from that, get better, and move forward?
Wow, this is, I really like the imagery piece, and you know, thanks for sharing that. As we go here into this next part and wrapping up, what are some key things that you want us to remember as we move on in your presentation?
Yeah, so I would say that the most important things are that if you are able to treat yourself like an athlete, because let's be honest, we are all out there performing every day, then there are some really simple changes that we can make that help us start feeling a whole lot better. You know, if we're really intentional with our time, then we're going to get a whole lot more done. We don't have to use that sort of rise and grind mentality where we wear our sleep deprivation like a badge of honor. We should be focused on the priorities that we have, and then we're able to be way more efficient. And then, I mean, if you spend all of your time on the most important things that you need to do, then you're going to have plenty of extra time left over to do some of the things that you probably would have just let waste your time for a lot longer when you should have been working. So, really, we all have the tools that we need to be successful inside us, and we just need to make better use of them. We have to start using our mind and to boost our performance. We need to have our brain, which is so darn powerful, working on the positive things instead of the negative things, so that we can just get out of our own way. Really, that's probably the biggest thing that I want people to take away from this.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I've learned some things and recommitted myself to a few things. So I want to say thank you to you, Luke, for coming on and teaching us how to perform that athlete performance mind, because we all look at athletes with and we like, wow, they did it. They won the marathon, or they're making the playoffs, or they're making it to Super Bowl. They shoot these, they score the goal or touchdown or what have you, be it the game. And you're right. They have to focus, even if they failed. They didn't win the game previously. The game last night, they have to focus on the game in front of them today and how they can win that. And so being able to shift their mind from failure to the possibility for success and actually go through and win it. It's a huge mentality, and to be able to bring that into our everyday work and to shift that mindset and to hold that, I think that's an incredible strategy. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share it, Joyce. I really hope that people are able to take a lot away from this.
Okay. Thank you, Luke, and thank you for those listening. This is Luke McEldowney, our consultant and wellness consultant and coach, and of course, that performance management guy who works with us. Thank you, Luke. Have a wonderful day. And thank you all for being here. So this is Joyce Odidison. I want to just thank Luke McEldowney, our wellness consultant and lead performance coach, who's just shared with us how we can put on that athlete mentality to move our days and to be more successful at work, but also help us with our mental and emotional wellness. I love how Luke added those emotional and mental wellness pieces to it to really change the way we look at our everyday work and our everyday performance. Joyce Odidison here, Interpersonal Wellness Services, Inc. And thank you all for being here. And I hope you put on the mentality and that athlete mentality to boost your performance at work. Stay well, be well, and we will see you at the next session.